G'day, and welcome to the return of Emerging Meta in Age of Sigmar. This video is brought to you in partnership by AOS Reminders, and I'll be using their data to deep dive into the most popular list choices during January to April 2021. If you're new to this series, I'll be using predictive analytics to help you understand the trends that you are likely to see on the gaming tabletop soon. I won't be looking at past tournament performance, but rather how players are building their lists using AOS reminders and things that you might see at the tabletop soon. The purpose of this video is really to highlight some of those key elements in list design that you may want to incorporate into your own army, or to help you understand and better prepare for your opponent by looking at some of the rules, maybe considering some of those counters that you can build into your army, or things that you should consider in your list design. As I mentioned earlier, the data is generated by players like you using AOS reminders. So without further ado, let's dig in and unpack what is emerging in Age of Sigmar. COVID really knocked the meta for 6 as games came to a grinding halt. Tabletop Simulator did certainly help the community play during the peak of the virus. However, countries are only now starting to open up and events are popping up. I know I've been one of the really lucky ones to play in a couple of 2-day events in the last 6 months. As you look back at how the meta has really changed since the last emerging meta video, in 2021 alone, we've had Daughters of Khaine, Hedonites of Slaanesh, Lumineth Realm-Lords all receive a new battle tome, and we've got Stormlight Gravelords coming on the way, in addition to the supplements of Broken Realms, Teclis, and Be'lakor, which has given a significant advantage to your Cities of Sigmar, your Nighthaunt, and your Nurgle armies in their list design, let alone the fact that Seraphon has also got a cheeky upgrade to the way that they can tap into some of the Bound Endless spells and getting Forbidden Power Endless spells. That's just in 2021. In 2020, we've also had the Sons of Behemat, we've had Seraphon, we had Tzeentch, we had KO, we had the first Lumineth book drop. In addition, we had Wrath of the Everchosen, we had Broken Realms of Morathi, we had White Dwarf release rules for Troggoth armies, Squig armies, Spider armies, and then we've also had points adjustments in July and January. So we've had a lot of things that have shifted and changed and modified the meta, which has brought things up and also brought things down. During the first few months of 2021, there has been 15,885 lists generated in AOS reminders between January and April. So we have a pretty large sample size considering that we don't have large events running. Of those lists generated, what we've seen is the most popular builds have been Stormcast Eternals, Nighthaunt, Auric Warclans, Seraphon, Ogre Mawtribes, Cities of Sigmar, Gloomspite Gitz, Nurgle, Lumineth, Slaves to Darkness, Khorne, Tzeentch, Ossiarch Bone Reapers, Daughters of Khaine, Skaven, Sylvaneth, Legions of Nagash, Flesh Eater Courts, Iron of Deepkin, Kharadron Overlords. So you can start to see that Stormcast really has still remained one of the most popular and often because it's the most easy to access. But it's interesting when I look at some of those armies that have really snuck up. The fact that Gloomspite Gitz is up there in the top doesn't necessarily mean that they are the top in the competitive sense and they're not winning tournaments per se, but the popularity of the army has significantly increased, and I would imagine partly to do with the fact that we've gotten a whole bunch of, Squig players gotten excited, Trog players getting excited, Spiderfangs players are getting excited, and they're building new lists to match the new army. Nighthaunt in Broken Realms Be'lakor got a whole bunch of cool things, and people are now list teching with Nighthaunt, and I'm sure these armies are going to hit the table in the near future. When you look at just the top 10 factions overall, they contributed to 53% of the list generated over the month, the 4 months. So it's interesting to see how armies have kind of changed. And when you look at some of the other considerations, you've got Cities of Sigmar, they've gained Harkuron and Settlers Gain and Misthaven as potential builds. As I mentioned earlier, Nighthaunt players have now got 2 sub-allegiances that they can tap into and some really interesting rules that people are going to start building around. Nurgle got a whole bunch of new war scrolls rewritten for things like Sloppy Bilepiper and the Scrivener. And as I mentioned as well, you know, the trogs, the spiders, and the squigs have all gotten a whole bunch of new rules. So that's just some of the things that have happened, let alone the impacts of Wrath of the Everchosen, some of the new models like, you know, Be'lakor, for example, and, you know, Lumineth getting a whole new range. So let's dig a little bit deeper into some of these builds. And I might start off very generically, and Realm Artifacts got a significant change in the last General's Handbook. So I wanted to acknowledge it and kind of show the shift in the meta. You might remember we had Malign Sorcery artifacts that really helped with a whole bunch of, I think it was like 12 artifacts or 10 artifacts per realm. There was a large set of artifacts, and there was always like a top 5. You know, I'm going to pull one out for my homies here, the Griff Feather Charm and the Thermal Rider Cloak. And, you know, when I did this in the past, it was always like the top 5, the top 10 artifacts would always be the same. You could kind of, you know, if I asked you now, you'd probably tell me Sword of Judgment, as I mentioned, you know, Ethereal Amulet. There's a whole bunch of them. Anyway, they've now been reined in, and we've got these realm artifacts that have got 1 per realm, and they've been kind of toned down a little bit. And it's good to have a bunch of artifacts you can tap into if you need something that you don't quite get in your battle tome. So I thought I might be interested to show you what is actually being represented from the people who are accessing the realm artifacts. As you can see, Shimon is clearly the favorite, and it was actually my personal favorite. I played with my Gargants for a little bit, is the Plate of Perfect Protections. That was coming in at 34%, the most popular realm artifact being chosen if they forfeited an artifact from their battle tome. And if you're not familiar with the Plate of Perfect Protection, it does mean that you change the rend characteristic of -1 down to a flat 1. So into a flat nothing. So it doesn't actually reduce it by 1. It just ignores the effects of Rend 1. Rend 2, Rend 3 will still have its mark. And the armies that are most choosing the Plate of Perfect Protection are the Slaves to Darkness, the Auric War Clans, and the Ogre Moor Tribes. The second most popular was in Akshi, and that was coming from the Rage Blade, the Incandescent Rage Blade, and another one that's a personal favorite of the Gargants. And the reason you're picking this one is you pick one of the bearer's melee weapons, and if the unmodified roll is a 6, so if you roll an attack sequence and it's a 6 unmodified, it basically doubles, so you get an extra hit on the target. You still need to roll for wound, you still need to roll to save, but for some of those high damage, and I know, for example, my Gatebreaker Mega Gargant has a attack sequence of up to 10 attacks, and I can do 3 damage off that attack. If I can get 1 or 2 additional 6s, that can be crazy chaos. So no surprises, the highest use came from the Sun's armies, but also Slaves to Darkness and Cities of Sigmar, all taking the Incandescent Rage Blade. Finally, the third most popular is the Shyish one, which is the Grave Sand Brooch, which allows you to reroll save rolls of 1 for attacks that target the bearer. So really, 1, it's awesome because you don't have to spend a command point if you want to use all that defense. 2, for someone who wants some defense in shooting, that all that defense only affects melee, it doesn't affect shooting, so it gives you and much like the Plate of Perfect Protection, it is quite good to defend yourself against a lot of shooting, and in addition as well, the fact that well, I mean, you're rerolling save rolls of 1, so you don't have to cast Mystic Shield, or you could be putting Mystic Shield on somewhere else. It's essentially a free Mystic Shield running around, and you don't have to worry about your Techless, your Nagashas and friends, you know, trying to stop that spell from going off. So who were the most popular allies chosen across the board? Well, the most popular ally choices were coming from the Vampire Lord, the Aetherwings, the Fungoid Cave Shaman, the Knight Incantor, Be'lakor, Gotrek, the Blood Secretor, the Celestant Prime, the Gunstock Gunhauler, the Mega Gargant Mercenary, which is the one that kind of caught me off. It was specifically the death-based one, so the big Drog Fort Kicker. And some other ones that aren't on the list here were things like Arcan the Black, the other Mega Gargants, so the Bundo Whalebiter, as well as One Eye Grunnock, the Alapex, the Aiden of Deepkin Shark, your Shadow Warriors, your Untamed Beasts, and another interesting one that I've seen pop up a few times, and it was good to see it on the list, was the Corpse Cart with the Unholy Lodestone. And we got Soulblight coming, who knows how that will change, but these were just quite popular. Some of the reasons why these were popular ally choices. So you've got your Vampire Lord coming in most popular with Nighthaunt. And one of the reasons I've thought that it's most popular is because the Deathly Invocation healing does work between Vampire Lord to Nighthaunt. So it does work with the summonable keyword, and it allows you to heal or return D3 models or heal D3 wounds on a summonable unit, which is good synergy. And it's a bit more durable than some of the Nighthaunt heroes. It does have a once per game chalice to heal itself up. In addition to all of this, the Blood Feast rule that it gives allows you to get +1 attack on death units within 15. So I thought that was a really nice little combination when you bring it into Nighthaunt and synergize that with some of your big forces. You've got your Aether Wings. Now, anyone who has seen an Aether Wing knows why they're popular. They are a cheeky choice. They are cheap. They are fast. They score objectives well. You can sit them on the backfield. The most popular choice would be your Eye of the Deepkin, although technically probably Cities of Sigmar as well, but they're not an actual ally choice in cities because of the 1 in 4 Stormcast can become a cities unit. And one thing that can work quite well is the combination of the Forgotten Nightmares rule with the Aether Wing, so forcing a unit to shoot your Aether Wings, or maybe you actually have your defensive eels up the front and you protect your Aether Wings from going down, and then you unleash them and score something in the backfield using your Aether Wings with their fast speed and low model count. Some of the other ones you might be thinking about is the Fungoid Cave Shaman, and the Auric War Clans love this particular ally because it's a resilient little wizard. You get a 4+ damage prevention roll, so while it only has 4 wounds, it can take a bunch of additional saves, so you're going to get a lot more. And in addition to all of that, you also can get an additional command point on a 4+ in every one of your hero phases. So being an Auric player, they definitely want more CP, so really good ally. Uniting Cantor being a popular choice with Seraphon, in addition to other allies, but Seraphon definitely gives you access to the Stormcast endless spells. The Everblaze Comet certainly is the one that people love to access. It is a bit pricey, but you can do mortal wounds from pretty far out. You can affect the casting, and you can do some serious damage when it pulses. So you drop it down, it does some mortal wounds. At the end of the battle round, I'll do some mortal wounds. There's a whole bunch of mortal wounds doing. So love my Knight in Cantor, in addition to the once per game auto unbind. So it can just automatically read off a scroll and stop someone using their Soul Scream Bridge or some super critical spell. You could stop it immediately. And it's got a 3-up armor save, so the Incantor is super durable. Be'lakor being popular because of Dark Master, a great allied choice, but I do wonder how that will change with the new War Scroll and his points increase, and let's see if Be'lakor is still a popular choice. Gotrek is popular, especially when it comes to Stormcast. Your Secrators going into the Blood Secrators going into the Slaves to Darkness. Almost said Stormcast, that would be awkward. You got your Celestant Prime going into Seraphon, and funnily, I think I saw Lockie at a tournament recently. One of my club mates, or one of the people in the Discord as well, Lockie was running his prime time with his Seraphon, so that was an interesting little combination. I'd love to chat to him more about why he was doing that. Your Gun Haulers going into Fire Slayers, that was a cheeky little way to get some additional movement and some nice little shooting. And as I mentioned, the Corpse Cut with the Unholy Lodestone I'd call out, because Flesh Eater Courts are probably bringing it into their list to increase their spellcasting potential because of the Lodestone ability. So let's talk endless spells, and the most popular endless spell choices were the Balewind Vortex, the Umbral Spell Portal, the Geminids, Chronomatic Cogs, Warp Lightning Vortex, which is a Skaven, although you could probably technically call it a Kharadron Overlord's endless spell now, but it's certainly a Skaven spell. You've got your Hex Gorgeous Skulls, you've got your Bound Geminids, so both Bound Geminids and Bound Balewind Vortex make a play here, which are exclusive to Seraphon. You've also got your Blown Tide Shrieker, you've got your Hishian Twinstones, you've got your Prismatic Palisades, your Wraith Axe, you've got your Runic Firewall. One of my personal favorites is Scuttle Tide. As I mentioned earlier, the Everblaze Comet coming out of Stormcast, Emerald Life Swarm, your Chalice, and your Purple Sun. And your Arachno Cauldron and your Aether Void Pendulum. That's your kind of your top 20 And when I looked at some of the uses of endless spells and how people were considering endless spells, now knowing you can only take up to 3 endless spells in a 2,000 point match play battle, what was really interesting to me was when I looked at the endless spells that did damage versus the ones that provided a utility benefit of some description, it was very positive towards the utility value. So people, when endless spells very first came out, tried to build out as much damage dealing as possible, and that they are your purple suns, your warp lightning vortex. Even warp lightning vortex is more of a utility than it is a damage. It's a bit of both actually, but your Geminids, your Wraithax, your Pendulum, your Everblaze Comet, your purple sun, these are all out there trying to do damage and kill key characters, reduce potency of monsters, whatever it might be. But the utility value, things like your Balewind Vortex or your Umbral Spell Portal, being able to extend the ranges of your spell casting, your Chronomatic Cogs, really coming in to speed up your army and your opponents, but really helping you to get some consistency on the charge or even mitigate a 3-inch charge. With Chronomatic Cogs, you can't fail a 3-inch charge because you get +2 to the charge. Things like Hex Gorgeous Skulls, your Twin Stones, those Twin Stones we'll talk about a little bit later. They are great for getting off additional spellcasting potential, or things like your Emerald Lifeswarm being able to bring back D3 or D6 bodies, depending if you're cities or not cities. Long story short, utility value is more popular than the damage-dealing endless spells. So who were taking the most popular endless spells and maybe the ones you might want to start considering for synergies? When we look at the top 4, you've got your Balewind Vortex, which people probably know already, but if you don't, you cast it. It's available to everybody. You get +1 to the armor save to the wizard on top of the Balewind, and you also get to extend the range of a spell being cast by that wizard by 6 inches. So really good for keeping your wizard back and not in the threat of your enemy as the rest of your force advances, or being able to get to your opponent earlier with an additional 6-inch range. So who were taking that the most popular? Well, certainly in a Seraphon list, there was about 32% of Seraphon players were taking the Balewind Vortex. That's in combination of bound and non-bound. I imagine these numbers might be a little bit higher, maybe. If you're taking a Seraphon army with your Lord Croak, you're definitely taking a Balewind right now. Who knows what Croak's War Scroll is going to look like when he gets his new model, but right now that seems like an auto-clue between those two little guys. You've got your Ogre Moor tribes, that's probably going on the Butcher. That's about 30% of lists of Ogre Moor tribes is taking the Balewind. And Tzeentch, it's not that quite popular, but certainly it was one of the more popular ones. About 9% of Tzeentch lists were taking the Balewind Vortex. Next up was your Umbral Spell Portal, and again, another way to extend the casting range in a different way. But if you're not familiar with Umbral Spell Portal, basically there's 2 of them. You put one down, then the other one is within 18 inches apart. And it essentially extends the range of the spell. You're casting it through one portal, through the other portal, and you can draw line of sight from the second portal. So it really does allow you can only do one spell. So if you've got a really potent spell, you need to go off and you need to, try to reduce the potential of your opponent, or, Lumineth Realm-Lords. This is a perfect synergy with Lumineth. We'll talk a bit later with the Cathalar. But if you want to throw out a really potent spell and you just need that one spell to go off, Umbral Spell Portal is great for that. And no surprise, your Tzeentch, your Lumineth, and your Cities of Sigmar all coming in, having that particular endless spell. You've got your Geminids, your damage-dealing Geminids, but also they cause, so when you pass a Geminid over your opponent's unit, they are going to do D3 mortal wounds. If you pass over with one of the Geminids, they act independently, but must within 6 inches of each other. But if the light one goes over your opponent's unit or yourself, it can be thrown back. But it'll cause -1 to hit, so a nice little debuff. Or the black one, which is the shadow one, will cause -1 damage. So it is a damage dealer and also a debuff. And finally, Chronomatic Cogs coming in 4th, being popular with your Nighthorn, especially when you synergize that with the coming up from the underworlds and being able to, come up without outside of 9 or 10, or get the 9 or 10 roll. but getting +2 to that will just make your life easier and probably more consistent in hitting the charge from coming on the underworlds. That's when you speed up time. When you slow down time, you get +1 spell cast. So your wizard, if it's within range, can cast 1 extra spell, and it can re-roll its save. So most people manipulate the cogs to speed up. But if you have a monster, or a high wound wizard, let's say Nagash, for example, let's say Techless, and Techless doesn't need, I mean, you could get +1 to cast, plus additional spell to cast from Techless, but he's already got enough. But if you've got Techless, for example, or Nagash, or a supercaster, or a lot of change, and then you slow down time, you're now re-rolling saves, and Nagash has got a pretty good save already, so you can really mitigate the amount of damage coming on your wizard. So either way, all 4 good choices. But I thought I'd make some interesting call-outs for some of the other spells being chosen in the army. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll be here until Christmas, so you can pause the screen and look it up yourself in your battle tomes, or go look it on a wiki or whatever it might be. But I'll call out a couple of the key ones I thought, at least, which were interesting. This is a combination of both spells on the war scroll and spells being chosen from a spell lore or a prayer lore. Don't at me, corn players. But a couple of quick call-outs would be your Slaves to Darkness and the Demonic Power, coming off the Chaos Sorcerer Lord, is an awesome way to get the rerolls to hit and rerolls to wound on a single unit. It's a powerful spell. I can only imagine the combinations you could make. I used to love, there used to be an old wizard called the Lawmaster, and it would allow one model to reroll hits and reroll wounds. And, it was almost a perfect ally to Durthu to get consistency with Durthu. But hey, we're talking Chaos here. We're not talking about Sylvaneth. So your Chaos Sorcerer Lord, great spell coming out of Demonic Power. Nurgle's Glorious Afflictions is a great way. Another spell that I love, casting value of 5. It's got 21-inch range, threat range. But the reason I love it is it allows you to basically make your opponent's army a whole lot slower. So you cast it on a unit, and it halves the movement characteristic, and it halves the run and charge rolls. So, forcing someone to spend a command point to try to attempt to charge, or even just reducing, put it on a critical piece. Let's say your opponent's a Cities of Sigmar player, and they've got a Hurricanum. You put that on a Hurricanum, which is a key synergy piece that's moving up with Iron Drakes, Phoenix Guard, some type of combat beast. It now means that it's drawing those units behind, because they want to stay within synergy range or buff range of the particular support piece. So I really like that spell. Beasts of Chaos, I thought I'd give some love to Beasts of Chaos. The Tendrils of Atrastrophe, I'm sure I butchered that. It does reduce the spell, so that reduces the save roll by 1. So you cast it on a unit, and it reduces the save roll by 1, which is really cool, because it then starts to combine well with your high rend potential. I think of Bulgors, for example. It really does mean that every hit's going to count, and throw a command point down, and you get a lot of damage coming out of some of those critical pieces. The other side of the fence is you've got your destruction. Oops, I forgot the big War image. But you've got your destruction. You've got your war chanters. Now, yes, your war chanter beats aren't technically a spell, but it was interesting to see the difference between your big War and your Iron Jaws. Your big War really going for the fix 'em beat to get that D3 wounds healed, while the Iron Jaws players were using the get 'em beat for the 3d6 charge, and being able to declare a charge from within 18 inches as opposed to 12 inches. So super fast, more crushers, super fast your piggies. Just being able to throw a threat from 18 inches is great. Your Ogre Moor Tribes, the Blood Feast is a cheeky little way to increase the melee output of your non-monster ogres. So you can get, I think, +1 attack, but it has to be in melee, and you can't be a monster keyword. So unfortunately, I don't think it helps your like your Stonehorns and your Thunder Tusks, or even your Morn. I can't remember if a Mornfang has a monster keyword or not, but at least if you're building the Dadbod Gutbuster builds, that would certainly help some of that melee output. And then I've got to give a shout out to my homies, which are the Gloomspite Gits, and nice to see my favorite spell, the Hand of Gork, I wish I had the Hand of Gork in every army I played, but being able to just teleport your key pieces around the table, and it's just such a late game threat. As the attrition wars come in and objectives start being opened up, being able to pick up a small unit, a unit that might be almost dead, but you got 1 or 2 models and picking them up and teleporting them in the backfield, and like you could steal an objective with 1 or 2 models if someone's left them off. So big love to the Hand of Gork. It's a great spell. Your death spells, so Nighthaunt, Spectral Lure from the Guardian of Souls really remains a critical spell that's keeping those troops back on the table. And with the changes to Alinda, not specifically to Alinda, she didn't get a new War Scroll, but just the ability to bring Alinda onto the table with some more durability around her. It was easy always to snipe Alinda, and people stopped using Alinda for that reason. But with Broken Realms Be'lakor updating her bodyguards and things like that, just some real cool things that we'll talk about later on the channel, I wonder if Spectral Lure will be nearly as important, or you'll be able to create a really good 1-2 punch with Alinda and Guardian of Souls to just keep these big bodies of summonable units, your Grimmies, your Chain Rust Horde, your Miamon Banshees, like all the stuff that's up with those summonable keywords, your Spirit Hosts, really keeping them alive, being healed, being alive, and winning those attrition wars. OBR, I was looking at those OBR spells, and it was interesting. Obviously, Empower and Netherite Weapons for me, that's the number one spell that you're always looking out for. It's an interesting spell. It's a critical spell for OBR, but it was interesting to see that the Shard Storm was top, and it made me wonder. Shard Storm, by the way, is the War Scroll spell for the Bone Shaper. So I'm imagining that Bone Shapers are just super popular in OBR lists, and what I'm normally seeing, at least, is things like the Bone Tithe Shrieker being maybe cast from the Bone Shaper instead of its natural spell. But hey, if you guys have any thoughts or ideas, as always, pop them in the comments and let me know how you're using Shard Storm. I don't think I've ever seen it cast. Your Soulblight Gravelords will eventually replace Legions of Nagash. So I'll pour another one out for my homies, Van Hell's Dance Macabre. I don't know if it's going to change. I don't know if it's going to stay. I just know that when I was running my Legion of Night quite successfully, that it was a great spell to be throwing down onto my Skeleton Horde. Also, Vile Transfer, it's a great spell, but again, who knows if it's going to stay and if it's going to stay the same. Another one that I might pour out, and this is a real pour out to the homies, is an RIP one, and that is that the Curse of Years will probably be gone. Suck that, Clint. Curse of Years being the spell that's sitting on Arcan the Black, and I don't want to do any spoilers, but I'd be surprised if Arcan the Black is going to be in Soulblight. So I'll pour one out, but Clint, sorry, not sorry. Finally, you've got your order spells, and again, this laundry list is massive. So again, pause the video, go look at it yourself if you want to see specifically about an army I don't talk about. But a couple of key things. It was interesting to see that all 3 of the top Stormcast spells were coming from the War Scroll spells. Your Knight Incantor, your Evocators, and your Lord Arcanum on the Gryph-Charger. And that was relatively true to Seraphon as well, being that Seraphon using Comet's Call and the Celestial Deliverance coming from Lord Croak, and the Blazing Starlight from the Skink Star Priest. That just tells me how popular and important those particular models are, because they're dominating the spell choices. I'll give another shout out to maybe an underrepresented homie, and that is the Sylvaneth. Sylvaneth need all the tricks that they can get, and that branch wraiths roused to wraith, giving 10 free dryads is solid gold. I have 2 branch wraiths to make sure that you can get out those. I mean, obviously you can't cast it twice, but being able to just cast dryads is just gold. And in addition, a call out regrowth, which is a great little spell that's coming from the lore, and not on a War Scroll. It's actually one you choose, and it allows you to heal a model up to D6. I don't think it regenerates, but it does heal. So it's great for things like Durthu and Drycha, those combat monsters in the army. Keep them alive, keep them at their top brackets, doing as much damage as possible. So to help us understand a little bit more about the armies that I've spoken about, I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive to some of the newer battle tomes. So your Sons of Behemat, your Lumineth Realm-Lords, your Daughters of Khaine, and your Hedonites of Slaanesh. So very, very similar to some of the last things I've just spoken about. I'll give you a high-level overview. I can't go through every single rule and every single ability. I'll call out a couple of key ones, but feel free to pause it. Feel free to look at your battle tomes and look at maybe why these come into play. So starting things off with your Sons of Behemat. So Sons came out. A lot of people haven't really had a lot of experience against Sons armies out, but players like me are getting them on the tournament scene and doing relatively well. I haven't won a GT yet, but I'm winning more than I'm losing, and that's the most important thing. And also having fun in the process. So a couple of quick call outs for the Sons that you might want to be aware of, or at least build around. So your Sons army really only has 5 war scrolls, technically 4 because the bone grinder from Forge World is hot garbage, and there's no way that I would take a mercenary mega gargant in a Sons army. I lose too much. So really I've got 4 war scrolls to play around with. For me, when I look at it, your man crushers are your only battle line choice. You must take it. We'll ignore that at the top, no surprise. But of the 3 mega gargants, the order is striking. So you've got the utility value of the Kraken Eater coming in with the ability to kick the objectives. It has a few more rock throwing shots that the Gatebreaker doesn't have. It's a bit more consistent in its damage, although it doesn't have the raw damage output that the Gatebreaker has. So for me, Kraken Eater probably fits in all 3 of the tribes, no matter what you're building around. Your Gatebreaker is a wonderful damage dealer, and as I mentioned as well, that the Rage Blade just works so well with the Gatebreaker. And probably no surprise, I'm not the biggest fan of the War Stomper, and it sits 4th. So this is not my propaganda. This is how the data pulled out. But for me, probably Kraken Eater, Gatebreaker, and War Stomper is approximately how I see the order of the Mega Gargants. What did surprise me though was that we saw the Stomper tribe being the most popular build. So the Stomper tribe being the force for the War Stomper. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm more of a taker or a breaker tribe. And if you are playing Stomper, I'd love to hear from you on why. Maybe people are just looking at the body count. In Stomper, you take a lot more bodies. I'm running, in my army, I'm running 6 to 8 models at most. In Stomper, I think you can get up to 9 to 11. So another way to get more bodies on the table. But what is interesting from the Stomper tribe as well is the command traits, and very shouty is a great way to get additional command points at the start of the first turn. You get D3 additional command points. So if you are in an army that's quite command point hungry, and the Stomper tribe definitely is of the tribes, very shouty is a great call out. Some of the artifact choices were quite interesting. The Rage Blade is on there. The Kraken Eater's Sandals is a good one as well. For me, I'd shout out number 3, which is the Enchanted Porticus, or I'm just going to pretend I said that correctly, because it's the one that I've been using lately. I initially ran the Plate of Perfect Protection, and it provided some good defense, but when I came back up against Ren 2, it didn't really do much. But I've had a lot of success with the 6-up damage prevention to wounds and mortal wounds. And when you consider that you got 35 wounds on a Mega Gargant, getting a 6-up save on a flat 4-up armor save in addition is just going to mean your Gargants are around scoring objective points, doing damage, because they don't degrade very, very rapidly. You just got them on the table for a lot longer, and in their brackets a lot longer. Second one I'm going to call out here is the Lumineth Realm-Lords. So this is a combination of Battle Tome 1 and Battle Tome 2. So if I did this like 2 months later, I think we would see a different mix with the unit choices. And I think the FAQ being delayed, we've only just gotten the FAQ if you're watching this live. It's been about 5 weeks now. And, and that means that people couldn't really take these armies to events and tournaments. But if I did this list two weeks later or 2 months later, I can always guarantee you that the Law Seeker would be sitting in the top 10. I would also imagine, is it Severeth, the Foxy Fox? I think a Foxy Fox is going to be in that top 10 unit choices as well. But, very traditional Generation 1 stuff is mostly in the list choices at the moment. When it comes to those sub-allegiances, you've got your Sar. That is topping the list choices for the most popular. Not only are you getting more Aether Quartz reserves, but when I was looking at the rules, the goading arrogance ability is just crazy good when I'll shout out, one of the boys that are going to do a list talking with me soon, Hayden, has been doing a lot of tech when it comes to the goading arrogance, because you basically, it's like a challenge, right? You pick an enemy hero, I think it's within 6 at the start of combat, and the enemy can only fight that person who does the goading arrogance. So if you've got some type of hero in the backfield, or within 6, right, and you're protected by a bunch of your Venari, your combat, is it your wardens, the spear guys? But let's say you got a big block of those wardens, right, and there is a gap between, that monster or that hero can't get technically to 6. It doesn't have fly. It can't get around. It means that hero is basically tied up with troops and it can't fight. It can't even fight the core units it's into. So it's pretty brutal. So really keep that in mind, and probably why it's such a popular sub-allegiance. When it comes to those top artifact choices, we did see a whole bunch of them coming in from the sub-allegiance, but one that was being chosen was the Silver Wand. And probably because mostly it gives you an extra spell to cast. So, Lumineth having a great spell lore combines really well with the endless spell of the Hessian Twin Stones, which is a crowd favorite up there on endless spells, which is going to, boost your casting significantly, especially an early cast. When you put it down, you roll a d6, and that essentially is a dice that you can add to your spell casting, and then every other spell that's cast within 12, you can move that dice to 1. So if you need your Cathalar to get that spell out, I've forgotten the name of the spell. Is it the Darkness of the Soul? If you need to get that Cathalar spell out, and you really need that spell portal or whatever it might be, you could supercharge, and even if you don't have Techless, get that spell off or that Umbral spell portal out by adding up to an extra 6 off the back of the Twin Stones. So, and hey, you can cast 1 extra spell. So cast the Umbral spell portal, cast up the Darkness of Souls from the single caster. Wow. The last thing I'll call out is it's no surprise that the Power of Hish and the Darkness of Souls is at the top of the spells, which is really tying into the fact that your Venari Wardens and your Cathalar are your top 3 unit choices. When it comes to Daughters of Khaine, it's a bit of a tale of two halves, and we've had 2 new battle tomes. We've had a new battle tome to Hedonith, and we've had a new battle tome to Daughters, and it's no surprise to see that Hagnar remains supreme. I was sure that some of the other temples would start to creep up, and I think Keltnar will continue to creep up, potentially into number 2 spot. But the reason I love Hagnar, and I think the reason that Hagnar will stay popular, is because it works across all of the units you're choosing, while the other temples are really focusing you towards a particular build. Your Xanthar Kai or your Cobra Kai really rewarding you to go down the snake route. Is it Drakey Ganeth or the Kraith really focuses you down on Sisters of Slaughter? Again, Hagnar and probably Keltnar are probably your top 2. Your Hagnar's +1 to the Blood Rights table and +1 to the Fanatical Faith, really does give them a strong build, especially because you really want to get that Fanatical Faith table humming as quick as possible. Activate the avatar, tap into some of the buffs. I was surprised to see Morgraith not up in the top 10. I think for me, Morgraith is like top 5 choice. She's an auto-include for me when it came to the Hag Queens. She's a cheaper Hag Queen now. She gives you the similar abilities, and in addition, she has more wounds because she can bounce off more wounds to her homies on a 2+. So you've essentially, for 80 points, gotten yourself a 10 wound Hag Queen. So I imagine her stocks are only going to go up. But again, you've got your Snake build, which probably tie into the popularity of Calibron. Obviously, Morathi has been hitting the tables a lot, and it helps that she's also retained her Ren 2 after a bit of a roller coaster of having Ren 2, then going back to Ren 1, then coming back to Ren 2. Your Bloodrack Viper as an endless spell is such a great choice. It's such a good choice. It's cheap. It's on a large base, and it has the potential to auto-slain heroes. Like you roll 3 dice, and if that equals or graters their wound. So if you've got a minor hero with 5 wounds or 6 wounds, you roll 3 dice, and if one of them can hit a 5, you've essentially auto-slain a 5-wound hero. So it's just so good. And then maybe one other call out is that it's nice to see the Canary back in action. And it's the Canary Heart Renders, which is the shooty Canary, not the combat-focused Life Takers. For the Heart Renders, and I got to play Matt Gammy at a tournament recently who was running 2 units of the Heart Renders. They're great for stealing objectives. They're fast. They come down from the sideboard, and after they've shot on a 4+, they can move an extra free 6 inches. So great way of stealing objectives when you drop them down, do a little bit of damage, and then get an extra free move or move away from the threat. Finally, of the 4 that we're looking at is the Hedonites of Slaanesh. A couple of key points here is it's interesting to see that Demonettes are definitely there. I imagine they're probably there because as well of summoning. They're in probably all lists, whether they're your battle line choice or your summoning choice. I spoke to Russ Veal earlier about, we did a list talking show, and he called out the inclusion of Chaos Warriors as a great battle line choice. And here they are sneaking into the top 10 units in number 9. They're a good addition for the new way of depravity. So something to consider if you're open to tapping into Slaves to Darkness and the Slaanesh keyword. It was interesting to see that Be'lakor has been a popular ally choice, and I mentioned earlier Dark Master being such a great rule, being able to use it off the side of the board, and you don't have to be on the table anymore to be able to do the rules. With the new War Scroll, I'll be interested to see if people are tapping into Be'lakor, and we've got two new heroes coming soon. The Hedonites have the twins, so it'll be interesting to see if people use those points to bring in one of the twins. We don't know what those rules look like yet, but something to consider from an ally point of view. I was surprised not to see as many mortals in the top 10 than this. It is very demon focused, and I think maybe part of that comes down to people not wanting to explore the battle tome first to see how new depravity, see how new locust works, see how the new rules change, and then maybe consider some of the things like the Blissbarb Archers. Sigvold's in the list, which is great. I was surprised not to see Glutos in the top 10, but either way, people seem to be focusing more on the demon side at the moment than the mortal, but that may change. The other one I might call out here is, from a spells point of view, I'll call out a lot of these spells coming from the War Scroll. I think, the Choir, for example, the number 1 is coming from the Keeper of Secrets, but the Progeny of Damnation being the favorite spell from the spell lore is great for your greater demons. It's got a low casting value of 5. It gives you the ability to heal your Hedonite heroes, your demon Hedonite heroes, either D3 or D6, depending if you roll a 10+. I think it improves the healing abilities. But either way, it was interesting to see how people are starting to build these lists, and I imagine over the next couple of months, will the mix of demons versus mortals change? So that's it for this particular episode. Again, we could have gone through everything till the cows come home, but I want to give a shout out to AOS Reminders. It's a great resource. I keep talking about it. It's just that good. It's free. It's going to help you, especially for people who haven't played the game, and it's been a while since you started using the game, or you're preparing for a tournament, you're trying to get a bit of speed up in your decision making, or you're finding yourself flick between rule books. Go check out AOS Reminders. Thanks for the data again, much appreciated. But go check it out. It's a free resource. Highly recommend using it. But I want to hear what you have thought. What did I miss? Were any surprises? Is there any maybe some connections of rules and abilities that I didn't talk about that you think is worth calling out? If you want to talk more about this, guys, I'd highly recommend coming onto the Discord. Discord link is below, as always, in the episode description. We can talk about list tech. We can talk about some of the decisions here. And if there's something that maybe I've missed or maybe something that I should talk about in the future, do let me know, as always. But I hope you enjoyed this. And as more data starts to creep in, hopefully we can get a more consistent emerging meta series back on the channel. But this would give you a snapshot of how we've been going between January to April 2021. I hope you found that discussion valuable. If you did, give the video the old thumbs up. And if you have a comment or an insight, leave it in the comment section below. The champions over here are my AOS Coach Patreons and YouTube members. So you guys are bloody legends. Thank you for all the support. If you want to know more about the support programs, the links are below down here in the episode description, along with a link to the Discord server, so we can continue this conversation. Until next time, don't forget to name your characters and have a good one.